Guys, welcome to the Relaxed Running Podcast. Tyson Popplestone here, and you're in for a treat today because we've got the great man coming at us from Twickenham in the UK, Dave McNeill. Hasn't been on for a little while now, and usually he's accompanied by Bert Gershutter, but today, just because of time zone differences, it's me and Dave. So much has happened since he was last on the show. He went out and ran the Olympic qualifier of 13:12 over 5k in Perth, and he's gone over to the UK and around Europe to try and chase some more races so he can get selected for that Olympic qualification, or officially qualify for the Olympics in Tokyo. So I messaged him a couple of weeks ago and I said, mate, I would love just to follow the journey to Tokyo, where I hope you're on that start line. He said, hey, let's do it. So what we're going to do for the next couple of weeks is catch up, talk shop, talk about how his racing's going, how his training's going, how his mindset's going, and whatever else comes up in the meantime. So as always with Dave McNeill, it's a really good conversation, really good chat, and he's a really good fella. So hey, make sure you enjoy this one. Shoot him a little bit of love on Instagram if you enjoy it. Make sure you give him a follow. Let me know as well if you're enjoying these chats with Dave. Now, if you are not already a member over at Relaxed Running, jump on board. We've got the technique analysis up and running now. I've got some of the videos coming through for me to be able to assess, analyze, and offer some practical guidance on how to improve that technique, run more efficiently. That's only one facet of the membership. If you want, you can access the Distance Runners Toolkit as well, which will give you access to all the training programs, the Experts Corner video library, the forum, and everything else that's on the membership. So, hey, jump on over, have a look. There's a 3-day free trial. If you're not interested after that, you get your money back. So, relaxedrunning.com, and you'll click on the Relaxed Running membership. But guys, that's enough from me. Let me get out of the way and introduce to you the man who's back in town. Well, not physically, he's in London, but on the podcast, he's back in town. My good mate, Dave McNeill. Hey, before it cut out just a moment ago, I was telling you that I wasn't sure whether 7 p.m. Melbourne time was a good setup for you, because I wasn't sure exactly where in the world you are right now. So whereabouts are you?
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. It's now, we're just past 10 a.m. on Monday. So I'm in the UK. I'm staying just outside of London, kind of the southwestern suburbs, I guess, in Twickenham. And yeah, actually just back from a run with Morgan McDonald. He's in the area too. So good times.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
A good fella.
I'm a fan of his YouTube channel, and I wish I had spoken to you before before you went out for a run with him, because I'm disappointed he hasn't uploaded in a month.
Oh yeah, well, he's got a little sports carnival coming up in about 50 days time, so I think his attention's probably a little bit more towards that than the YouTube, I think.
It was so funny because I started posting a few videos on YouTube actually about a year and a bit ago, but I was very inconsistent with it, and I was so happy I got to like 40 subscribers. I was like, hey, I'm the man. And then I saw him announce that he was making a YouTube channel, and then I checked it a couple of weeks later, and he had like 14,000 people subscribed. And I was like, Morgan McDonald, teach me. I know you're a good-looking man with plenty of charisma, but what is your secret?
Yeah, I think that might be it. I mean, you're a good-looking guy, Tyson, but Morgs has got those flowing locks, that nice evenly growing beard. Plus he's a good fella.
It's so true, man. How's being back over in London treating you? Is it nice to get out of the country?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is, and I'm grateful, because it's obviously a different situation in Melbourne at the moment. But I was talking about this on the run this morning. Like when I left Australia and left Perth, I remember there was just this critical moment where you're in the airport and you go from like being in the airport proper to like going past security. And I remember getting to that threshold and just thinking, man, I don't know when I'll be able to get back in here. So in some ways it feels a lot further away from home at the moment. So I've had twinges of homesickness. I'm doing what I wanted to do this year, which is fantastic, and it's for the most part it's going pretty well. Fitness is still ticking along, and Had a bit of a hiccup for my first race here, but then did a bit of a pacing job over the weekend, which went well, and I boosted the confidence a little bit, and I've had some good sessions. So it's kind of, it's the, wherever you are, it's the same sort of journey of ebbs and flows and waves and all of those sorts of things. But for the most part, it's pretty good.
Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, there's some nice little sounding birds just out by your window there, I reckon. Are there? Are they not nice? I feel like your face just painted a different picture to what the sound of those birds painted in my ears for a moment.
Oh, no. I'm in total agreement with you. It's so fantastic. I'm staying in a suburb called Twickenham, and lots of trees around, and I've got my window open, and I have that song just all day. Wakes me up in the morning. It's a remedy for everything. It'll cure everything.
Dude, I just felt a little bit happier just hearing that first little. Only heard one say g'day to his mate, and I feel like I was cured as well.
So I'm up at the top floor of this house I'm staying at, and during the day, outside of training, I'm spending a fair bit of time just in the garden, reading books, doing a bit of work, and listening to birds, and watching the bees pollinate all the flowers. It's very peaceful.
Awesome, man. You actually saw one of your nice photos up on Insta the other day. You had your legs look fit, bro. I was like, oh my God, he's in form. In that, whenever I see some solid veinage in a runner's legs, I go, mate, he's ready to fly. But I also saw that sitting on your little coffee table was a book. What have you been flicking through at the moment?
Yeah, actually, I just finished it yesterday. Actually, I was reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, so a bit of a old school book. It was. It's really been fantastic. I've read a few kind of like books in that. I don't know what genre you call it, whether you call it self-help or spiritual enlightenment or a bit of everything, but just kind of I call them life books, I guess. I would say like 90% of what he said, I was just like, man, this guy's got it spot on. And then 10% I thought was a little bit crazy, but no, it's a very good book, and the whole kind of thesis of it is about mindfulness and being present, and the power of living in the moment, not falling into the trap and anxieties of past and future and things like that. So it was a good read.
Yeah, awesome, man. I don't know how much you know about Eckhart Tolle, but I've went through a phase where I was really obsessed with learning about him, and it's interesting as well because when he was I think he was 29, and he went through like a really intense phase of depression and just feeling like he just didn't know where he was going. I think he said he was on the brink of suicide, and for whatever reason, one night he woke up, and I don't know what you call the moment that he experienced, but things just clicked into place, and he's done a beautiful job of just sort of being able to boil down, like, I guess you could say complex ideas into real simple terms. And I read the book a couple of years ago as well, and it's one of those things, man. It's like what we always seem to get talking about, that it's quite simple, the things that he's reading about, but it's one of those constant reminders that you need. Just like you can't train once and be ready for the Olympics, you can't take a message like that and just apply it permanently.
No, absolutely, and I think like his perspective is a variation on other perspectives and ideas that I've read that really all have the same message. And his is probably exceptionally simple in terms of the power of now, and all that we have is the present. But it all kind of ties it all into and he describes it when he had that sort of epiphany when he was 29, when he was suffering all this depression, of just kind of like stepping outside of his mind, and then kind of looking at all of his thoughts, all of his feelings from the outside, And then he kind of like, he captured, oh man, I can go to this place all the time. Like where, if my mind's busy and I'm worried about things and this and that, I can take a step back and kind of view it from the outside. And he kind of talks about all of this from a bit of a spiritual perspective. And he tries to keep it, I guess, as agnostic as possible. But still, with reference to different religious traditions, I guess. But it's, at the end of the day, it's all about, for him, it's all about the power of being in the present and getting in touch with that kind of that deeper spiritual kind of side, I guess, whatever you want to call it. He calls it different things. He calls it, the unmanifested, being, and consciousness and unconsciousness. It gets a bit tricky sometimes, but like if you can, and this was the thing. If anyone wants to read this, I recommend you read it how I read it, which is probably like 2 or 3 pages a day, because it's kind of the sort of book that it's kind of nice to just sort of sit on a page or 2 at a time and just let it sort of mull over in your head. Like I said, it was a good read.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's really good. I just finished one today, which I'd seen on bookshelves for ages. I'm an Audible fan. Like I don't read a heap of physical books really. It's sort of like the records to me that are making a comeback. There's something really nice about it that I want to get more into it, but I've just got to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm going to carve out of my day in order to make time to read? And I've just been a little bit slack the last few months, but the Audible book that I just got through, which I'd seen on shelves for months and never really been that interested in. And I listened to a Rich Roll podcast the other day where they had these 2, I guess you call them neuroscientists. I'm not 100% sure. They're doctors, and they study specifically dementia and the steps that you can take to, avoid going down that track, regardless of, genetic predisposition and things like that. Just, I guess, all about reducing your chances of it. And these guys I loved. I'd heard them a few years ago, and they mentioned this Atomic Habits book in such a positive light that I thought, okay, I can't ignore it. And I just said to Jesse tonight, man, I was like, I reckon it's one of the best books I've read or listened to, I should say, in the last few years. It's just the ability to break down just the power of simple habits and the compound interest that they have. It's funny, man, because coming from like the running world, I thought I was just the king of habits. It's like, mate, I'm so disciplined. I can get up, I can do my work, I can do what needs to be done. But it's funny just how many little blind sides are. I think I still have. So it sort of just helped me take a little bit of a step back and go, okay, like what are the areas that I'm just ignoring too consistently? So if you're on the hunt for another one, man, you might. I know you and I are sort of on the same page with a lot of these book recommendations. So yeah, you should check that one out.
I think the hunt's over because, like you're probably now the 5th person that has recommended Atomic Habits to me. When we've had this conversation about what you're reading, and I've said, I'm reading The Power of Now, and they're like, oh yeah, you should. Have you read Atomic Habits? And so maybe it's a sign.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. But I tried to start listening to that. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I 100% relate to you. Like, there is a certain element of being, disciplined and dedicated and fastidious as an athlete, but my organizational skills and habits could still definitely use some work, for sure.
How do you find it when you're traveling? Because I knew whenever I went through London with Jesse for a couple of months. Sorry, I went through Europe with Jesse for a couple of months before we planted ourselves in London. And I always look at, the traveling distance runner as it's just the dream. But one of the things that I absolutely loved was when we actually got to London and we just got to plant our feet for a little while. I felt like it was easy to get back into training rhythms and sleep rhythms and food rhythms. And how have you sort of adjusted to that with your training and everything over there?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and no, I'm on your page as well. I for the most part crave kind of being more settled and things like that. So yeah, you look at it on paper, it's cool. Like and especially now, like I have an opportunity now which most of the world don't have, which is to be overseas and doing what I love and so forth. So I don't take that for granted. But a couple of things. It's so much harder in a COVID world traveling. So much more expensive because you have to get COVID tests every time you're traveling. And there's always the uncertainty of whether you're actually going to be able to get across borders and get to races. And just last week, some of the MTC guys had a bit of a nightmare trip to Gothenburg, which made all the more difficult by COVID restrictions and timelines on when tests are valid and not valid and things like that. So I for the most part, I'm here, for the purposes of, well, initially it was all I wanted to do was run PBs, and I've kind of ticked a couple of those boxes. So now the focus is on seeing if I can, consolidate that and get picked for Tokyo. So I've got a job here to do, and so that kind of keeps me focused. But I've been fortunate so far that haven't left the UK since I got here, so I have been pretty settled. I've had one race and one pacing job, and then this week things get a little bit crazier and do a little bit more travel. But as a distance runner, particularly we've had an Australian season. I've already raced, I think, 10 or maybe 11 or 12 times this year. So I've just had a couple of weeks where I've just had some uninterrupted training, which is nice. It's a pretty, I'm kind of treating it like a training camp. So I train, and then for the most part like I said, I'm spending out in the garden and just reading books and just trying to stay happy as best possible. But there's certainly nothing glamorous about all the racing and traveling. It's in and out all of the time. The reality is that, particularly at this level, and as old as I am, it might be only 1 in 10 races where you truly leave, feeling satisfied and happy. And a lot of the time, you have disappointing races or races that don't live up to expectation, and you combine that with busy travel schedules, sometimes not a lot of sleep, and sometimes it can take its toll. But fortunately so far I've had a pretty good trip, and I've had some time to just kind of settle back into a training routine after a pretty busy, April and May of racing.
Yeah, awesome. Where were you pacing over the weekend?
So I went up to Birmingham, which was, it was only like a 2-hour trip away. So pretty easy travel, just a train trip from where I am. And it was the European Cup 10K that was also combined with the British Olympic trials for 10K. So had a lot of there were a lot of people trying to get Olympic qualifiers, people obviously trying to make the British Olympic team. So it ended up being a pretty good meet, and I did my job.
Awesome, man. How far through did you take him?
I took him to 6K. So I took him a K further than I was asked to. It was just a bit of a it was a bit of a strange race. It was, the pace that had been organised and the pace that I was asked to go it was different. So there was a little bit of just felt a little bit awkward to begin with. But then once the race got going, Sean Tobin, an Irish fella, and I, it kind of sort of became clear early on that the pace that we'd been asked to do, no one was actually really interested in that. So we kind of took it back to the original pace that had been established, which was to try and get them Olympic qualifying times. and they had those fancy pacing lights on the track as well. So we eventually kind of slotted back into that, but it was kind of like trying to balance what you've been asked to do and what everyone's doing behind you and actually being of use to people. So I think we found the balance, but because it ended up being a bit slower than we were asked for, I felt pretty comfy, so I gave him an extra K of my time.
Yeah, there's some funny videos on YouTube where people don't quite have that clarity of mind to go, okay, no one's following us, and I have to stick to this pacemaking duty. Like, what is it? Total Running Productions, I saw did one where I think it was an 800-meter race, and some little African dude was about 40 meters out the front of the field, about 300 meters in, and I was like, it's just more embarrassing to sort of stick to the pace that you were asked to do if no one's coming with you. So what did you realize the first couple of laps that people just what was the original pace that you were trying to take them around in?
So the pace that European athletics and had the kind of the email that had been sent to all the athletes with details like the meet details and check-in and all of that sort of stuff said the pacemakers for 27:20 as well as pace lights, and then there'll also be separate pace lights for a 28-minute for people that are trying to break 28 minutes. But then we got asked to run 27-minute pace. And then it was kind of just I don't think really anyone in the field knew that except for the person that asked for it. So or the people that had asked for 27 flat. So we just kind of told everyone on the start line what we were doing and then the pace the race got going and it just had to kind of make a bit of a call and things got off a bit crazy and then things settled down and I think everyone was happy in the end.
Awesome, man. Actually, I saw the results on Let's Run. This is the race that Mo Farah finished third in, did he, in the end?
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. He finished he finished second as second Brit, and I think he was eighth overall. Yeah.
And what was that? That was just like because I haven't heard his name actually for a little while. I wasn't even sure if he was still running around until I saw his finish, his finish result on the weekend. So who beat him? It was I guess for him it was sounds as though it might have just been a big rust buster, and he's trying to find a qualifier. Is he for another Olympics?
Yeah. I mean, he clearly didn't. It clearly wasn't his day. But yeah, it was a French guy that won it. And then second and third was a Belgium and a Spanish guy, and those three guys all ran under the Olympic standard, which was good. All ran PBs. And then a little further back, there was probably a string of 5 or 6 people, all sort of in that high 2740s, low 2750s. Which included Mark Scott, who won the British trial, and then right behind him was Mo.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. Hey, before I stray too far away from it, I want to bring it back because the thing that I am really excited to ask you about, and I can't believe we haven't spoken since it, and I've sent you a couple of messages just to say, bro, I'm doing fist bumps. But your little visit to Perth. So I can't remember if it was our first attempt at recording this podcast before the technical issues. But the last time I saw you was down here in Queenscliff, and you and I went for a bit of a run up to the lighthouse, and I was sort of just picking your brain about what your goals, your intentions were, and I felt like you were just like, I got the vibe you were being very honest, and you were just saying, okay, look, I'm going to do my best to qualify. Going to go out and have a crack. You just come off a 7:46 a couple of weeks earlier, so I knew you were in form. But despite all that, I didn't know quite what form you were in, and I don't know whether you did either. So I was interested to ask you first of all whether you did, and second of all, just explain the headspace to us about the lead up to that race. Because what was your? Sorry, I'm firing 15 questions. The last one I'll ask, and then I'll let you take the reins. What was your previous PB?
It was 13:18 from 2012.
Because you're not supposed to smash your 5K PB by 6 seconds when you're 35. I didn't think.
I know.
34. Are you?
Yeah, 34.
34.
No, you're not. No. Yeah, good point. I guess in answer to one of your questions, Yeah, I mean, it's what I was aiming for. I wanted to run a PB, and 13:13's kind of like within earshot of that. But I went to Perth kind of thinking, well, because Rambo was obviously trying to get the Olympic standard, and he's had a really good year, and he's a absolutely class athlete. So I kind of went there thinking, well, just try and hold on as long as you can, and the heat will probably get turned up a little bit after 3K, and just try and keep it together as best as you can. But I just I guess my race day mentality had been something I'd really been working very specifically on for the last couple of months, and I I just I'd had a I'd kind of I think the hallmark of my season up to that point had been I tried to be really aggressive every time I raced, and tried to really be very intentional about everything that I did. Not be so passive, not be so nervous and anxious. And for the most part, it had helped a lot. It probably helped in training, just getting a bit more out of myself. You know, in some races it had worked pretty well, like my 3K. I remember being on the start line, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I just went out and executed it. And but then other races like National 5K and a few others, I was proud of how I ran, but it didn't really show in the results because tactically I didn't run well, but at least there was something to be said about being aggressive and having a crack at least. So when I went to Perth, I knew I had to kind of I had an opportunity to put the aggressive side of things aside and just literally sit in and just stay as relaxed as possible, which was great. But still have that same sort of fire and intention of, let's just execute, try and run a PB here. And we went through 8 flat for 3K, which was exactly where I wanted to be. A few people have said, oh, it was a bit slow at 3K, and I always say, well, in a 5K, like if you're having your day, you can knock off like 5-6 seconds just in your last lap. 13:20 is 64 seconds per lap. So if you're having your day, you can get to the bell in 12:16, and you could run a 62, you could run a 60, you could run a 58, and you're gonna knock a few seconds off that average. So when we went through in 3K in 8 minutes and I felt good, I was like, this is great. I can run a PB here. I just have to keep these 64s going and then kick a little bit at the end. So PB was what I always was aiming for. But yeah, I didn't really think 13:13 until probably the bell lap, and I think I saw it was 12:16 or something at the bell lap, and thought, oh man, I'm actually maybe a sniff here. So I didn't take off like the clappers at 400 to go. I took off with intention, knowing that I still had 400 to go and needed to be strong the last 100, fortunately it paid off. And I kind of thought at that point, I had that race, I had Gateshead Diamond League, I had another race in Sweden lined up, so I kind of had a few 5Ks and didn't really think that it would happen on the first go. But yeah, to get that qualifier, I was in good shape, and probably there were definitely signs that I was capable of it, but you still have to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if I've learnt anything, it was 9 years since the last time I ran a PB for that distance, and it just goes to show, like, it takes more than being fit to run a PB. I've probably been in career best shape multiple times in the last 9 years, but you need a little bit of luck on your side. You need good conditions. You need the opportunity to line up with your fitness, and it didn't hurt having a pacemaker to basically 10 laps. So it made in hindsight, like, I got spoon fed that opportunity.
Yeah,
with
that's beautiful,
with
man.
a
So what was the vibe going through the race? Like, was it one of those dream races where, in terms of how your body felt, you just felt like you were floating across the ground, or was it more a psychological challenge where you felt that way many times before, but just seeing a couple of the numbers and being dragged along, as you've mentioned, was a couple of the factors that really dragged you through? Because I always look back to when I ran my PB, which is, it sounds so funny saying this to a bloke who just went through 3K in. Mind you, you're the odd one out here compared to the audience listening to this, so I feel like I'm in good company. I went through, my PB for 3K was 8:10, and I remember the day I ran 8:10. I didn't necessarily feel great the whole race, but I remember I got to 600 to go, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to lose it too much until I get to a lap out, and then I'm just going to lay it down as hard as I can for that final lap. And things sort of clicked in the last lap. But I look back at that with a big smile on my face, but I remember it wasn't necessarily just floating across the ground like I felt in a number of other races. So I'm always curious to know when someone runs a big race, what the experience was.
Yeah, I think, both my PBs this year, the physical experience wasn't really a factor so much. I was so laser sharply focused on, like, the process, that, like, the physical feeling, discomfort really didn't, like, it was there, but it was never a deciding factor. I was just like, I was fucking there to do exactly what I wanted to do, and that doesn't happen every time that that laser focus wins out. Sometimes the you can have a crappy day and it just it will bring you undone. But it didn't on this occasion. And I remember with maybe 4 laps to go, I was sitting behind Rambo and I could just see a bit of a gap forming between him and Stewie, and I probably hesitated briefly, but, like, not because of like how I was feeling and like, oh, can I do this? It was more like, oh, should I do this? And then I was like, no, I got to do it. So I went around, and then I just, like, I was still feeling great. And, well, as great as you can when you're running that quick. I always say this to people, like, and you make this mistake, especially when you're younger. When you run PBs, you go, oh, it felt so great. Oh, yeah, I can definitely go a bit quicker. But you very quickly forget, all the pain that you go through to get there. And certainly, like, I don't remember feeling, uncomfortable or in pain or anything. I only remember the ecstasy of, of running it and just being so laser focused on just doing what I was there to do, which was to try and run a PB.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. Well, I've already said it 100 times, but it was so impressive to watch. But one thing that you mentioned was your specific race day plan, and I know that involved a little more aggression and not being so passive and things like that. But in terms of, like, is it a sort of like a written out, laid down plan? What were the elements that went into a race day plan? Is that sort of from warm up to lining up, or are you? I don't know how you feel about walking everyone through it, but I'd be interested to know that process.
Yeah. So, I mean, in racing, plans always have to be flexible, of course, but, I think, look, it's varied from race to race. The plan is one thing, but the intention, I think, is another thing. And so I think what I've really been working on more is the intention. The plan a couple of times hasn't worked out terribly well, but the intention, I think, is really just for me. It's a combination of really reminding yourself and reflecting and reminding and reflecting on the work that you've done. and just telling yourself, and I've done this, I've done that, like um, I'm in good shape. Like you've ticked that box, so you tick the box, and then the intention is like, just put that aside. Don't even question it from here on out. And then the next thing I think is staying present once you actually get to the race. And I think that the thing that kind of prompted this, working on this, I guess, this year, apart from just some things outside of running that had affected me, I remember one of the races early in the season, like 10 minutes before doing my strides, and I had this thought go through my head. I was like, why am I still doing this? Like, should I actually really still be here? And I remember as soon as that thought hit my head, I knew I was in trouble. And of course, I had a horrible race after that, because it's kind of the first sign of doubt. And if you're doubting yourself before you're on the start line, you're already defeated. So I knew I had to get over that. And part of getting over that doubt is really practicing and kind of creating that mental headspace where you don't have doubt anymore. It at the end of the day, and Eckhart Tolle kind of makes this point as well. Like, all you have is the now. Like the past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is the very moment that you've got at the moment. So worry and anxiety doesn't help me. And actually, it's funny. I was watching this movie, Bridge of Spies, last night. I don't know if you've seen it, with Tom Hanks.
I haven't.
But there's one of the main characters is this Soviet spy in the US, and he gets arrested and charged and everything, and he's this really calm guy, and his lawyer, who's played by Tom Hanks, he's getting sentenced on the verge of the death penalty and this and that, and Tom Hanks's character goes, shouldn't you be a bit more worried? And the character just looks him in the eyes and goes, would it help? And it was such a good point. Like, and this is the point I'm making now, is that worry doesn't help you on the start line, and I recognized that early on. So my job was to try and create a headspace where that worry didn't enter into the frame of things when I'm warming up and mentally rehearsing and so forth. Nerves are great. That's another thing, and nerves. I think Roger Federer said it once: is if you're not nervous, then you're not invested enough, and you probably shouldn't be there. So the nerves never go away, but the thing I've worked on getting rid of is a little bit of that doubt, because it doesn't really serve you, and it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm not going to worry, I'm not going to doubt. You actually have to go through a bit of a process and practice it. And for me, practice looked like throwing myself into volunteering to pace the tough reps at training. So that might have been one thing. It was going to nationals and taking the lead and taking the pace on when it started to slow, and that might not have been the smartest decision from a tactical point of view, and trying to win the race. It certainly wasn't, but I think I learnt from that, and that's kind of culminated to where I am now.
Yeah, that was one thing that you spoke to me about when we were on that Queenscliff run. You'd told me that you started to be a little more aggressive in training, and I took a mental note of it, but didn't think too much about it until just then. So that was sort of part of a bigger picture of trying to develop that aggression and that race day, not toughness. Well, I guess toughness. Yeah, race day aggression is probably the best way to put it.
Or lack of or removal of at least some of the worry and the what ifs and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so like I'm the kind of guy that, and I know a lot of people out there would be the same. Anyone who's sort of aware of, got any idea of what's going through their head. But from time to time, I'd be on the start line as well, and there'd be random moments in my life where a thought that I completely disagree with would just poke its head up in my head, and it's something that I didn't necessarily believe or buy into. And it's amazing how many, even still, they'll pop in and I go, "Yeah, it's just whatever. Don't even give it credit." But it's where you start to attach a whole heap of emotion to it that it becomes a thing. So I was just curious to know, like, are you speaking about when you develop that plan to deal with any negativity that might pop up before a race or in a race? Is that saying you're trying to eliminate the thought, or you're trying to sort of eliminate the response to that particular thought?
Probably,
like if, for example, that thought of what am I still doing here came into your mind now. Is there a process that you go through to respond to that, or is it more just like, hey, you know what, I'm going to try and get into a mindset where those thoughts aren't even welcome into my frame of thought?
Yeah, well, fortunately so far, and I think this is the point. This is the point to make, is that the training that goes into the physical training, all the running, you do that for a reason, and it takes time for a reason, and you build these layers and so forth. And the same thing is to be said about the mental side of things. So I think the first part of your question is, no, I'm not trying to eliminate those thoughts. It is very much just not having the emotional or having a different emotional response to it. So that's one thing. But I think as a result of consistently working on it, I find that at least the last few races, I've found that they're just not there as much as they were, and that could just be a product of a bit of momentum. I've had a reasonably good year, and when things are going well, your confidence kind of follows suit. So it's probably a little bit of both, but it doesn't. It's not just something that you switch on and off. It's something that you have, or I found that you have to consistently work at, and that's not to say that It's not to say that I'm going to have great races all season. I mean, I ran 13:12 one week, and about 10 days later, I ran 13:54. So you still have bad days, and a bad day can be 10 days later. But I think and look, I remember after that 13:54, I was bitterly disappointed. I was like, oh man, what's going on here? But it's it's part and parcel of what we do. Is you have your ups and downs, and you as best you can. We talk about one of the most important components of your training as a runner is not specific workouts or specific mileage. It's the consistency. It's building the layers over years, and I think the same can be said about the mental side of things as well. Is consistency in your resolve and consistency in the time and effort that you put into working on it and growing. Mentally, spiritually, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That was one thing that stood out. I had Monaghetti on here the other day, and I was asking him about his durability and just his ability to get through things. And we spoke a little bit about his phone book theory, just that laying down of single pages in training sessions and just how beneficial it is to your overall performance. And it's true, isn't it? Like I'm sure Bert, yourself and I have had this conversation before, but one of the things that constantly blows my mind is there's no area of our life which really progresses just without a focused effort. Be it like if you don't go to the gym, your muscles just atrophy. If you don't eat well, your body atrophies. And I find it interesting. It crosses over beautifully to that mindset, like you speak of.
Yeah. If it makes it easier to understand, I'll give the analogy of my physical training. So the running side of things, like I've had a history of injuries and I'm obviously older now, and one thing that I've done over the last 2 years is that I run a lot less than I used to, and I think it takes a lot of confidence to to actually go, I'm going to do less now because that's better for me. Because we have in our mind that more is always better. So it absolutely takes some confidence to go, I can't do 160K a week like I used to 4 or 5 years ago. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, I'm not going to run as well as I did 5 or 6 years ago. I kind of proved that wrong. I've been doing a lot less, and what that lot less corresponds to is something that's been a lot more sustainable for me and has allowed me to keep that consistency as the kind of the be all and end all of training. How many weeks and months can I string together without breaking down? And for me, that's meant running a bit less. So bringing that back to kind of the mental and spiritual side of things, you have to find that balancing point that's sustainable as well. And I've talked about specific things I've done to make sure I'm in a good headspace on race day and things like that. But I've got to be in a good mental headspace the rest of the time as well. And the first point I should make is that a lot of the time I don't do a very good job at that. I think I mentioned at the start, I felt it's been a bit up and down while I've been here, and I've had some dark days while I've been here as well, and felt homesick and just generally miserable and so forth. But because of that, it reinforces to me the importance of doing things that make it sustainable for me long term. So I'm still I keep in touch with family every day. Last weekend I was here. Ben Buckingham and James Nipris were here, and I said to Ben, man, I just need to go have a beer. Like, I haven't had a beer for a couple of weeks, and so we went to the pub and had a pub meal and had a beer, and I felt a lot better after that.
Yeah,
but,
good bloke to do it with as well.
Yeah, you got to, you have to, nothing occurs in a vacuum, so you can't 100% separate, what you do for your running training from what you do from work, from what you do, socially, from what you do, for what your headspace is outside of running. So it's all tied together, and I realized if I'm going to run at my best, I've got to be at my best the rest of the time as well, and being at my best the rest of the time as well means trying to find what makes you happy, find what makes you smile, all those sorts of things. And like I said, I'm still trying to work that out, because a lot of the time, I have miserable days as well, but I definitely recognize that that's an important part of performance and consistency is just making sure you're happy outside as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point, man. Hey, you mentioned the next few weeks you're doing some more intense travel. We've got a few more races coming up. What are the ones we've got to look out for you in?
So next race I'm doing another 5K next weekend in Nice in France. Because of the border restrictions and so forth, I'm leaving the UK on Wednesday and traveling to Amsterdam for a couple of days. I'm spending a couple of days with a friend there, and then we'll travel to Nice from Amsterdam, because I can't do that from the UK.
Be careful with the muffins in Amsterdam, won't you?
What's that?
Be careful with those muffins in Amsterdam. I can't have you rocking up to Nice with dreadlocks and a stoner beard.
I will be careful, Tyson.
Sorry to interrupt. I just thought I was funny. That's an example of me bombing.
No, that's good. As it was last week, you weren't allowed to travel to France from the UK without quarantining for 10 days. But since booking all this, that's kind of changed. So I could probably travel there now. But I've already booked everything. So I'm going to France. I'm going a little bit of a roundabout way, and then after that, I can't get back into the UK without quarantining. So we're off to St. Moritz after that, and I'll meet back up with the MTC group that are here, who I haven't seen since Gateshead. Other than it's just been Bucks and I in Teddington for the last couple of weeks, and then after next weekend we'll all meet up in Switzerland.
Oh, that'd be awesome. St. Moritz is beautiful as well, isn't it? It's going to be a place to get some nice training done. I've only seen postcards. I'm not sure. Jessie, I had to fly back to Australia from London, and when I was back in Australia, Jessie flew to Switzerland. I'm not 100% sure where she went, but she came back with some photos that I was very jealous to see.
Very picturesque, yeah. I was there 11 years ago, I think, and I did actually go up to St. Moritz just for a few days, more just as a tourist than anything. Did a little bit of running up there, but yeah, it'll be nice to go back there. Might have to forego trips to the coffee shop, because I think those Swiss francs will quickly put a dent in my.
I've heard some stories, Jessie. Actually, it's funny you said that, because one of the things she told me, she goes, "Man, you wouldn't have survived 2 weeks in Switzerland," because I reckon she ended up going to Macca's one night because she was just shocked at how expensive everything else was. And I want to say a Big Mac there was maybe like the equivalent of 13 Aussie dollars.
Yeah. I mean, like, even in the UK, like, I'm not getting any. Most of the coffees are like at least $6, $6 Australian dollars.
What's that, like £4? Or?
Yeah, £3.
I got really used to that as well. And then when I did the conversions, I was like, oh my God, I reckon this week I've spent $700 on coffee.
Yeah. It's I try to be a little bit frugal, but also not to worry about it too much, because money comes and goes, and I'll be back at work eventually, and yeah.
It's so true. How long did you say you're spending in St. Moritz?
We're there for, I think, maybe 2.5 weeks, and then I'm not sure what happens after that. Hopefully that will hopefully bring us a bit closer to end of selections, or end of the cutoff for qualifying for Tokyo, and then hopefully we'll find out soon after that what's going on.
Yeah. So what is the process? Because I've called it early, and I'm hinting at AA that just select Dave McNeill. But I remember the day after your race, I probably shouldn't have. I got excited and just claimed the fact you'd done it. But anyway, I stand by it. But the so the process is, obviously you've got yourself, you've got Stewie, has Stewie ran the qualifier already? Like, was his last?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it's yourself and Stewie. Are you the only two with the qualifiers at this point, or has Morgan got it as well?
Yeah, Pat Tiernan's got it as well. Yeah.
Pat Tiernan as well.
Yeah.
What's Patty run?
He's run about 0.1 or 0.2 faster than I have, so he's run 13:12 as well.
Yeah.
And then you've obviously got Morgan and Rambo in the mix as well. So, there's a scenario where a couple of people miss out, and there's a scenario where everyone gets in. And so I hope it's the scenario where everyone gets in. But it's one of those. For the most part, I try not to think about too much, because it's not something I can control.
Yep.
I think of all those guys, Morgan is ranked the highest. He's got really good rankings points, but hasn't got the auto qualifier yet. But there's no reason why he can't. He's in top shape as well, and same with Rambo. He's in really good shape as well, and we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. And like I said, there's a scenario where everyone gets picked, and I hope that's the case. But we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I'm really keen, as we sort of said, we'll catch up just when you have good Wi-Fi service and a good connection and time. Yeah. But I messaged you a few weeks ago going, hey, I'd love to do like a little bit of a, I guess you call it a road to Tokyo, and whatever that encounters, the races, the highs, the lows, and sort of, I'm really interested, as you know, like we always seem to talk about the mindset that comes with everything in our life, but I'm really interested in that part of it as well. So I can only imagine that everyone who listens to this podcast would be keen to hear. There are so many people who message me on Instagram after your race, just to say, "Oh, like come on out, boys." So you've got a few Relaxed Running fans, so I know they'll be. That was even though it's just an excuse for me to catch up and chat to you as well. That was even more incentive for me to reach out and go, "All right, come on, we've got to get Davey McNeill on regularly."
Oh no, appreciate it. I mean, I do. Whenever I do these, I always like, and it's worth pointing out. I always think, oh man, I hope people don't like take my wisdom and think that I've got everything figured out, because man, I sure as shit haven't got everything figured out. So for anyone that's like listening to this hoping to get some nugget of wisdom, I hope you do. But be kind to yourself and know that I don't get it right all the time either. It's an ongoing process, and there's this common saying, you learn from your mistakes. But I think the less common saying is that you don't always learn the first time, and you don't always learn everything the first time. So I've made the same mistakes over and over again, and I guess my point is if you're listening and hoping to get some nuggets out of this and learn from it, just be kind to yourself, because it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, no, really well said, man. Well, hey, before we wrap it up, what do you got on for the rest of the day? What's the plan? A couple of coffees and a good book, or another beer with Benny Bucks?
Yeah, so no, Bucks he's left now. He's in Turku in Finland for a race tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. And then for me, I've got a massage in a couple of hours. I think I'm going to give myself a bit of a haircut. I wanted to. This like most people I'm sure would cringe, but since I've got here, the show that I've been watching has been Peaky Blinders, which I hadn't seen before. I think I was a bit late to the party, but I remember thinking last week, oh man, I'm going to Birmingham this weekend. Sweet. I'm going to Peaky Blinders country. I should get myself a nice Peaky Blinders haircut before I go, which I didn't get round to doing, but I'm like, I've kind of committed to it, so I'm going to get nice and short on the sides.
I love it, man. Yeah, get the haircut, the hat, the 3-piece suit.
Yeah. Pretend I'm cool like Tommy Shelby.
He's so cool, isn't he? We watched that when we were in London, actually, and it's a perfect environment to watch it. It's funny you mentioned that, actually, because Paul McKinnon, yesterday when I called him, he'd forgotten about the podcast. And I said, oi, I was really excited to chat to you. And he's like, yeah, sorry, I was watching Peaky Blinders.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 2 men of great taste. But no, awesome, man. That's good. Well, hey, dude, I'm really pumped to obviously keep watching. Even when I'm not talking to you, I'm following the results and cheering for you. And I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast will be doing the same. So, hey, we'll organise another one in a couple of weeks when you got time. It feels weird not having Bert here, but I felt so bad. My schedule's been not shocking, but shocking in the sense that it just doesn't line up with Bert. Bert's at the best of times, so I'm really keen to catch up with him.
Yeah, hopefully we will. It's obviously way harder now that we've got 3 time zones rather than 2 time zones to try and coordinate. But we'll get there.
Awesome, brother. Wait, I'll leave you to it. You go enjoy that massage, that haircut, and we'll chat soon, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tice.